Imagine waking up one morning and realizing your daily drive has completely changed. Higher taxes, new digital rules, and even cars that no longer need you behind the wheel. That's the reality millions of UK drivers are heading toward by 2026. From paying more for electric vehicles to facing tighter speed zones, self-driving laws, and stricter health checks, the entire system is being rewritten. What was once freedom on the road is becoming a maze of new costs, controls, and compliance. The question is, are British drivers truly ready for what's coming next, or already falling behind?
Number 1. Vehicle excise duty, road tax, for electric and low-emission vehicles. For years, electric cars were the pride of environmentally conscious drivers, free from annual road tax and praised as the future of cleaner transport. But from April 2025, the government is bringing major changes that will fully impact drivers by 2026. Every electric and zero-emission vehicle will now pay vehicle excise duty, ending the long-standing exemption. The goal is fairness between traditional petrol or diesel vehicles and electric ones, but the sudden shift has left many drivers concerned about rising ownership costs. Those who purchased electric cars for savings now face the same yearly fees as any other driver on the road. This new rule doesn't stop at annual charges alone. The government will also apply first-year registration fees based on the car's list price, which means premium electric vehicles will cost significantly more to register. Even second-hand buyers will feel the pressure because the tax applies regardless of when the vehicle was first bought. The expected average increase could add between £180 and £300 annually, depending on the model and year. These costs might sound small individually, but will collectively change how many people calculate the affordability of an electric vehicle in the UK. Drivers are being urged to prepare early, check their vehicle's tax band through the DVLA website, and update budgets accordingly. Many environmental advocates fear this step could discourage new buyers from choosing electric options at a time when the country needs faster adoption of clean energy. Policymakers defend the move, saying revenue from traditional fuel taxes is shrinking as electric cars rise in popularity. Still, for millions already adjusting to inflation and higher energy bills, this rule marks a worrying reminder that even sustainable choices now come with a financial price.
Number 2. End of zero exemption for electric vehicles in London congestion and ultra-low emission zones. For years, electric vehicle owners enjoyed driving through London's congestion and ultra-low emission zones without paying a single penny. It was one of the biggest incentives for switching from petrol to electric. But starting 2nd January 2026, that advantage disappears. The Transport for London policy will require even zero-emission and hydrogen-powered vehicles to pay the full £15 daily congestion charge. The exemption that once made city driving affordable is ending, creating new worries for thousands who commute or operate business fleets across London's central districts. The move, according to officials, is designed to maintain consistent funding for transport infrastructure as more drivers abandon petrol and diesel. With electric car usage climbing past 1 million vehicles nationwide, the government argues that continuing the exemption is no longer sustainable. Environmental groups support the idea of equality on the roads, but many citizens feel punished for choosing greener options. Taxi operators, delivery firms, and daily commuters are particularly anxious, as their costs could climb by several £100s per month. For those living within the expanded ULEZ boundary, the rule means paying even for short inner-city errands that were previously free. Experts suggest drivers should now rethink how often they enter the congestion area and explore alternatives such as public transport, car sharing, or parking outside central zones. Businesses running electric fleets may need to renegotiate delivery routes or service fees to offset rising expenses. While London's government defends the charge as essential for maintaining air quality progress, the public reaction reflects growing frustration. Many fear that this shift could slow the transition to electric mobility, especially for working-class families who switched vehicles expecting lower long-term costs and environmental benefits.
Number 3. Self-driving vehicles and the automated vehicle legislation.
The UK is preparing for a technological leap that could redefine the concept of driving. Under the Automated Vehicles Act 2024, the government has confirmed that fully self-driving cars are expected to appear on public roads by spring 2026. These vehicles will not require a safety driver behind the wheel, marking the first time automation will legally take full control. The legislation sets strict safety standards, stating that autonomous systems must perform at least as safely as a competent and careful human driver. This change represents progress for innovation, but also raises deep questions about safety, accountability, and the future of professional drivers. Insurance companies and manufacturers are already adjusting to meet the new framework. When a self-driving vehicle is operating in automated mode, liability shifts from the driver to the company that developed or operates the technology. That means if an accident occurs, the car maker or system operator is responsible, not the person sitting in the vehicle. This legal shift could reshape how insurance premiums are calculated and how claims are settled. For many drivers, that uncertainty is unsettling, especially as they imagine sharing lanes with cars driven entirely by software rather than human judgment. Testing of autonomous vehicles is already happening in cities like Bristol, Milton Keynes, and Oxford, where pilot programs are gathering real-world data. The government promises that autonomous technology will make transport safer, reduce congestion, and eventually lower emissions. Yet, millions of motorists remain cautious. They question whether algorithms can truly handle unpredictable road behavior, poor weather, and human error around them. While the rule symbolizes progress, it also signals a new era of transition, one where technology takes the wheel and traditional drivers must adapt to an entirely different kind of road reality.
Number 4. Stricter license renewal and eyesight checks for older drivers. By 2026, the government plans to tighten medical and eyesight requirements for drivers aged 70 and above, a move aimed at improving road safety, but one that's drawing concern among senior motorists. Currently, older drivers must renew their license every 3 years through a simple online process. However, proposed updates will require them to undergo mandatory vision and health assessments before renewal. Authorities argue that as life expectancy increases, so does the need to ensure that aging drivers remain physically and mentally fit to operate vehicles safely. This measure is being reviewed under the Department for Transport's Safe for Life initiative, focused on balancing freedom with responsibility. Eye specialists and road safety experts say that reduced vision, slower reaction times, and certain health conditions can increase accident risks, especially during night driving. The new checks will likely include a certified vision test and possibly a brief medical declaration verified by a GP or optician. Drivers found unfit will be required to submit medical reports or risk suspension. Supporters claim this approach will save lives and prevent avoidable collisions involving elderly motorists, but critics warn that these steps could unfairly penalize safe, experienced drivers and discourage older citizens from staying mobile or independent. Many also worry about the costs of medical testing and the confusion around how results will be evaluated. Officials encourage older drivers to prepare early, scheduling vision exams, reviewing medication side effects, and ensuring that corrective lenses are up to date. Families are advised to have open discussions about driving fitness instead of waiting for mandatory reviews. Though intended to protect road users, the upcoming rule highlights the UK's growing challenge, balancing public safety with personal freedom, as more people over 70 continue to drive regularly and depend on their cars for everyday life.
Number 5. Expansion of 20 mph speed limits and low emission zones. Across the UK, local councils are tightening speed and emission standards, and by 2026, drivers will see a dramatic increase in 20 mph zones and new low-emission zones, or LEZs. These zones are part of the government's long-term plan to cut road fatalities and reduce pollution. Cities such as Bristol, Oxford, and Edinburgh have already introduced large 20 mph areas, with Wales adopting a nationwide policy in 2023. Now, England and Scotland are preparing similar expansions that could make slower speeds the new normal in residential and urban centres. For millions of daily commuters, this means adjusting driving habits and preparing for stricter enforcement through digital cameras and automatic penalties.
The low-emission zone movement is also spreading fast. New zones in Aberdeen, Dundee and Glasgow are being fully enforced, and more towns are planning to follow suit by 2026. Vehicles that fail to meet emission standards will face daily charges or outright bans from entering restricted areas. Diesel cars manufactured by 2015 and petrol models older than 2006 are among the most affected. While environmental groups praise the initiative for improving air quality and public health, many drivers fear higher costs from fines, car upgrades, or restricted access to workplaces and city centres. Authorities insist that the reduced speed and stricter zone enforcement will save lives, lower noise pollution, and make cities more pedestrian-friendly. Yet small business owners and delivery drivers argue it will slow productivity and increase expenses. Motorists are advised to check local council websites for updated LEZ maps and road speed conversions. For everyday drivers, adapting early to these restrictions could prevent unexpected penalties. The rule reflects a national shift in driving culture, where safety, sustainability, and environmental responsibility now outweigh the old habits of speed and convenience.
Number 6. Stricter parking regulations and private car park rules. From late 2025 into 2026, the government will fully implement a new code of practice for private car park operators, aiming to reduce unfair charges and improve transparency for motorists. This long-awaited reform follows years of complaints about hidden fees, confusing signage, and aggressive enforcement tactics. Under the new framework, private car park companies must clearly display their tariffs, allow mandatory grace periods, and cap penalty amounts depending on the location. For instance, parking fines outside London will be limited to £50, while those within the capital cannot exceed £80, with both reduced by half if paid within 14 days. The goal is to end what many drivers have called a Wild West of private parking enforcement. Another major change involves the introduction of an independent appeals service. Motorists who believe they were wrongly fined will be able to submit evidence online through a single national platform rather than dealing with multiple operators. Parking firms will also be required to prove that clear warning signs were visible and that ticketing was justified. Failure to comply could result in the loss of their license to operate. This rule, managed by the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, will bring greater accountability and consistency to an industry that has long frustrated everyday drivers. Still, the reform comes with new responsibilities. Drivers must make sure payment confirmations are saved, especially in digital systems where apps or machines occasionally fail. Those who overstay their grace period could still face legitimate fines, but at least the process will be more transparent and fair. By 2026, the landscape of parking enforcement in the UK will look very different, more regulated, more standardized, yet still a reminder that convenience often comes with caution when leaving your car behind.
Number 7. New driving test cancellation and rescheduling rules. From 8 April 2025, a major change will take effect within the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA, reshaping how learner drivers manage their test bookings. Under the updated rule, learners must now give at least 10 full working days' notice to cancel or change their driving test date. This replaces the previous 3-day notice period and aims to reduce the massive backlog of waiting times that currently stretch across several months in many test centres. The government believes the extended window will allow cancelled slots to be filled by other learners, improving efficiency and fairness across the testing system. The DVSA has introduced this rule following years of complaints about missed appointments, ghost bookings, and wasted testing capacity. Around 6% of scheduled tests were previously cancelled too late to be reallocated, causing frustration for both instructors and candidates. Now, anyone who fails to give sufficient notice will lose their test fee entirely. This stricter policy is meant to encourage better planning and reduce the bottleneck that has left some learners waiting over 20 weeks for a test. While driving schools support the measure, many learners feel it adds extra pressure to an already stressful process. For those balancing jobs, studies, or health concerns, giving a 10-day notice may not always be easy.
Experts suggest learners prepare well in advance by maintaining regular practice sessions and confirming availability before booking. Using official DVSA apps or online portals can also help track earlier openings if cancellations occur. Though it may seem like a small administrative tweak, the rule represents a wider push to modernise the UK's driver testing system. By 2026, aspiring motorists will face a more structured but less forgiving process, one where organisation and punctuality matter as much as skill behind the wheel.
Number 8. Higher costs and tax pressure on older and high-emission cars. The UK government is tightening its climate and emissions policies, and by 2026, owners of older petrol and diesel vehicles will face heavier financial penalties. The Treasury plans to revise the vehicle excise duty structure, meaning cars producing higher CO2 emissions will move into steeper tax bands. Under the new proposal, first-year rates for high-emission vehicles could double, pushing initial registration costs above £2,000 for some large-engine models. These changes align with the government's 2035 zero-emission goal, but also mark a turning point for affordability. Drivers with older cars, especially diesels built before 2015, will see costs rise not just through taxation, but also through congestion and emission zone fees. For many families, replacing an older car isn't financially possible, so this rule has triggered widespread concern. Analysts warn that millions of households could be pushed towards debt or forced to downsize their vehicles. Businesses operating delivery fleets or rural services that depend on diesel vans are expected to face the hardest impact. Environmental campaigners defend the move as necessary to reduce pollution, pointing to health risks associated with nitrogen oxide emissions. However, motoring groups argue the government is ignoring the reality of economic hardship and limited access to affordable electric alternatives, particularly outside major cities where charging infrastructure remains inconsistent. Drivers are advised to start calculating long-term ownership costs now, using online emission calculators and DVLA tax tools. Selling or trading in high-emission cars earlier may help avoid extra fees. Car manufacturers are responding with hybrid and plug-in models that meet evolving standards, yet the transition remains uneven. This rule represents more than a financial change. It symbolizes the growing divide between sustainable policy goals and the everyday struggles of drivers trying to keep their vehicles legally and economically viable on British roads. Number 9. Changing liability and insurance rules for automated vehicles. One of the most complex transformations expected by 2026 involves how insurance and legal responsibility will work when cars start driving themselves. Under the Automated Vehicles Act 2024, once a car is operating in self-driving mode, the liability shifts from the driver to the manufacturer or operator of the technology. This means if an autonomous system makes an error that causes a collision, the company behind that system, not the person in the car, will be held accountable. For millions of UK drivers, this raises new questions about premiums, claims, and personal responsibility on the road. Traditional policies built around human error are being rewritten to handle algorithmic fault and software reliability. Insurance providers are now working with the Department for Transport, DFT, and vehicle developers to create hybrid policies that separate driver liability from system liability. In cases where automation is active, insurers may claim directly from manufacturers through special agreements. Drivers, meanwhile, will be required to ensure their vehicles meet safety certification standards before enabling autonomous functions. If the vehicle is modified or operated against official guidelines, personal liability could return to the owner. This approach is designed to prevent misuse, but also highlights the blurred line between human and machine accountability that will define the future of mobility. Experts believe these new structures will eventually make roads safer and insurance more predictable, but the transition period will be confusing. Some fear premiums could rise temporarily due to uncertainty and data collection costs. The new framework also introduces obligations for software updates, system maintenance, and reporting malfunctions, similar to aviation protocols. As automation expands across public roads, drivers will need to adapt from being active controllers to responsible overseers, redefining what it means to drive in the modern United Kingdom. Number 10. Rising concerns and compliance challenges for millions of UK drivers.
As 2026 approaches, the combination of financial, technological and environmental regulations is leaving many drivers uncertain about the future of personal mobility. The overlapping changes, from new taxes and stricter emission zones to self-driving laws and health checks, represent more than simple updates. They mark a full-scale restructuring of road culture in the United Kingdom. Everyday motorists, already struggling with high fuel prices and inflation, now face higher ownership costs and the pressure to adapt to evolving technology. What once felt like predictable rules of the road are becoming a complex web of compliance measures requiring constant awareness and planning. Surveys from motoring organisations show that over 60% of UK drivers feel unprepared for the rapid pace of these reforms. Many fear accidental non-compliance, such as missing tax updates, misunderstanding new digital zones, or failing to meet emission standards. Business owners worry about losing profit margins due to congestion fees and vehicle restrictions, while rural drivers express frustration at policies that seem built for large cities. Although officials frame these measures as progress toward cleaner, safer transport, millions see them as hidden costs of transition. The emotional weight of these changes is real. For many, driving represents independence, livelihood, and connection, not just a way to reach destinations. Experts recommend that drivers become more proactive, regularly checking DVLA notifications, local council updates, and environmental zone changes. Using mobile alerts and official apps can prevent costly mistakes. Motorists are also urged to explore hybrid or public transport options to offset expenses. Still, the deeper concern remains that mobility is slowly shifting from a universal right to a managed privilege. The year 2026 for millions of drivers will stand as the point when convenience collided with compliance, and the road ahead became more complicated than ever before.
The road to 2026 is shaping up to be one of the biggest transformations in UK driving history. What began as a push for cleaner transport has evolved into a full overhaul of how citizens move, pay, and stay compliant. With every new law, from electric car taxes to self-driving technology, drivers are being pushed to adapt faster than ever before. For many, it feels less like progress and more like pressure, especially as costs rise and freedoms narrow. Yet beneath the worry lies opportunity, a chance to embrace smarter vehicles, safer roads, and more sustainable habits that redefine modern mobility. Still, preparation is the key difference between those who adjust smoothly and those caught off guard. Stay informed through DVLA updates, local council notices, and verified transport sites. Reassess your car's emission rating, insurance terms, and renewal dates before these changes take full effect. The UK's driving future won't wait. It's arriving, rule by rule, mile by mile. If you drive in the UK, this directly affects you. Hit like if you found these updates valuable. Subscribe for more law and policy breakdowns, and comment below. Which 2026 rule worries you most, and how will you prepare for it?